Hi, welcome to After Hours. I'm your host, Amanda Conkin, and today we're going to be talking about art as knowledge. My guest today identifies as a research artist, and in his artist statement has been quoted as saying, "As a scientist and healthcare provider, I have wanted to help others in need. As an artist, I want to work at reaffirming the value of art in health, not only in healing, but as a way of knowing." Welcome to the studio today, Pierre Leichner.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Pierre. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
Hi. So if you can just give us a little bit about your background. You started as a scientist and then transitioned into the world of art. If you could take us a little bit into how that started and where your journey began.
Sure. I guess I was always interested in the brain or brain functioning. So I started off as a biochemist or neurochemist and found out that I actually found the lab too sterile, so then decided to go into medicine. And once in medicine, I gravitated towards psychiatry because at that time I felt that psychiatry was the specialty of the medical specialty that still cared on a more holistic way about the individual. And there was more tradition of having time to speak to an individual and get to know what the problem maybe was. And so I spent most of my career, 35 years, as a psychiatrist, working mostly in hospitals and in universities. So, however, I must say that the last 15 to 20 years I've been somewhat increasingly concerned about the trend in which medicine was going, in particularly the healthcare system. And the mechanization of it, and also the focus, which in psychiatry had come more towards, if you want, the behavioral, biological way of looking at things, and the pressures to deliver care in a very set way. So the business model that was being introduced into healthcare. So much so that I guess about 10 years ago I decided that the only way I could keep my self-esteem, my respect, was to step out of the system and to have a voice outside of the healthcare system. And so I engaged in the process of retraining myself as an artist.
And you went to, I think, Emily Carr University,
Yes,
I believe?
I got my bachelor's from Emily Carr, and then I went and got a master's from Concordia in Montreal.
Excellent. And so you have a master's degree then in both art and in science as well, I believe.
Yeah, I've got my MD, and I've got my psychiatry fellowship, and I have papers I do have.
So does that basis in education inform how you bring this research artist? I'm interested why that term, how art informs your research, or vice versa.
Right. Well, I think it's a good question. I mean, I think it's a very important point. I think we've gone away from knowing. I mean, in general, I believe that in general, most people do not think of art as a way of knowing or as a way of furthering knowledge, but yet it is. On a continuum, if you think of science at one end and art at the other end, both are really looking after the pursuit of meaning, existence, our conditions, and so on. Both share really that pursuit. But of course, they do it in different ways. And over the last 100 years, we've moved much closer to valuing the scientific way, the statistical way of thinking, and as that being the way of furthering knowledge. But of course, that's just one way of doing it, and it has its own limitations. And both art and science working together complement each other. I think, unfortunately, we've gone to a point where we think of art as being just entertainment. I think my perception is that most people don't think of art, in particular, let's say visual arts, as something that you have to give it time that can bring you information and knowledge about the human condition, be it health or any other condition.
Excellent. And you do a lot of community work in grassroots community, and I think that's literally brought into some of your art pieces that we have here in the studio. Sure. So let's examine a few of these. Now, the Grassroots project, can you explain a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, the Grassroots project started now, I think, about, I would say about 4 years ago, one Christmas time, when I was studying. At that time, I was doing my master's in sculpture. And sculpture involves a lot about making molds, and creating molds. And I made the connection that when I was young in Europe, when I was in France, we used to have the tradition around Christmas of planting wheatgrass into little plates on cotton. And I remember as a child always being amazed how when you pulled the wheatgrass out after it had grown, how the grass roots had taken the shape of whatever the plate was underneath, densely. So I got the idea that perhaps of using the roots of the wheatgrass as the medium, rather than using plaster or other kind, and just use that. So I started to make some molds and experimented about how to make those. Then the wheatgrass, the roots take that mold. In fact, I think we have one here.
Me too, yeah.
Just to show you approximately how it goes. This one is still somewhat, it's kind of going, but this is obviously still green, the wheatgrass. And what you can see, I think, is that there's a mold. There's a mold of a face that I've taken. So this is an actual person who I've...
And where do the faces come from? So do people volunteer to come forward and
Right.
have it taken? Or?
So the project that's here, I've done now a couple of these, but this one in particular was commissioned by the Britannia Community Center.
Okay.
And these are, I applied for that project, and these are actually literally grassroots workers,
Oh, wow.
right? So these the community nominated 8 workers who themselves then agreed to having their faces molded.
Wow.
And over a period of 2 or 3 months, I was able to mold their faces and then put them on display. So it was a community sponsored project. And the roots themselves, once they come out of the mold, dry, as you can see there, and they keep their shape. And I installed these, while they're still alive, in different places. In this case, it was in the library and different places around in the Britannia Center. And they dry there. So they kind of just comment also on the process of life and death, literally, in terms of watching the sculpture change, transform.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Well, that's excellent. And we have a few other pieces here
Right.
I'd like to explore. So we've got right behind us, and it's a lamp, I believe?
It looks like a table lamp, right. But it's I call it 300 cents because there is actually, it's a comment on, if you want, again, pollution in terms of the environment. This is a three-headed fish, so I had the idea in the sense of these mutations that occur when there are pollutants in the rivers and so on. Inside those dots actually cents, which we know are going to be extinct. So it'll actually be quite valuable in many years. Actually, there's about this 300 cents in there. So it's a comment on, obviously, on money and economy and what we do with our money in terms of pollution and so on.
And so when you're getting inspiration for work like this, do you really start from a place of where you're moved from your brain, or is there a passion that comes forward? Sort of how does that work when you're creating a piece that, while it looks quite beautiful, it also has a lot of meaning behind it?
Right. Well, I think this is where my previous work as a scientist and so on kind of comes in the sense that I do some groundwork before. I mean, I do have obviously an idea, and the idea is a creative idea that comes. And but before I actually tackle the work, I do some research work. So I will be writing, I will be reading articles, I'll be doing some groundwork that will then, and at some point after I got this amount of information, I'll let my creative kind of part come in, artistic part, and look for metaphors, things that can be translated into an art form that is both artistic, hopefully, and meaningful as well. So that the viewer will be seduced into looking at it, and they have different interpretations, which is great, and different meanings.
Excellent. And have you written a lot? Now, I'm sure as a scientist or coming from that background, you would do a lot of writing and literature, but as an artist, did you as well just sit down and I think the written word is a little bit different than something that's a sculpture or an art piece. Do you also communicate in that way to your viewers or audiences?
Right. Yeah, indeed. I just had a recent article published on the phenomena of transcendence in art. Okay. And I also written on another body of work, which we'll talk about later, around books and altered books. So I do try to publish in the art literature as well, articles.
Okay. And Transcendence in Art, can you just give us a little bit about what was the essence of that article?
Well, most people will say that when there's a piece of work that inspires them, that there's an altered sense of consciousness, but they make a connection. It may be brief, it may be fleeting, but it's something that we know is different. We just feel it. It's not unlike people may find it in nature, you know, or listening to music, but something happens that we don't really understand, because there's lots of theories about consciousness, but it is a mystery. It is a wonderful mystery that sometimes scares people and makes people want to control it. Nevertheless, so transcendence is this phenomena that we find in art, and I kind of explored it both from different aspects in this article I wrote, suggesting that maybe in the near future, this arts and science, if they were to come together, we might eventually, if you want, evolve to an alterscendence, a new type of transcendence.
Excellent. And so the written word has influenced a lot of different art that you've done today. Behind us we have, I think, what do you call the piece with the mirror inside
the mirror,
of it?
okay. So this is part of a body of work that started, again, I would say about 3 years ago. For quite a while, I was trying to kind of keep away from my previous career of psychiatry, but after a while, I realized that I had a lot to say. In fact, motivation to go into the arts was to be able to step out of actual being the system of healthcare, to be able to talk about it artistically. One of the books that I think a lot of people know, the DSM, or the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, is due to be, the next one is due to be published this year.
And is it a yearly publication then?
No, it's much, it might be more like on a 10-year, 15-year basis sometimes. And there's a fair amount of criticism. I have some concerns about the direction this book has gotten in terms of categorizing, and you know, almost everybody's got a disorder nowadays. So it's a categorical and rigid system. So I decided to do a project on it. And so the question was, how do I explore, how do I, through metaphor, show this concern I have about this book and this tendency in healthcare? And I decided to use the book as a metaphor. So the book itself as an object, and start to carve landscapes as well as objects into the books. I had this paper that I was carving out, and I like in my practice, I like not just to leave things as they are, but to keep through a process of transformation. So I said, what do I do with this paper now? So with this paper, I started to make objects out of paper casts. So here what we have is actually a frame, fairly ornate frame in a mirror, that is made out of a book called the CPS, which is a compendium of pharmaceutical. So it's all about drugs. And so all this paper I casted, and I made the frame out of it. And it's a mirror. It's a mirror because obviously I want people to be part of it, to see themselves in it and realize, I mean, we all take drugs one way or the other, and to think about why.
Right, okay. And we have you're talking about taking out of the books and creating other pieces. I think we have two here as well.
Right.
So it's quite beautiful. It looks like an ordinary book here.
Yeah, this is actually the feminist perspective on eating disorders. The series on DSM is on display right now at the Surrey Library. So, but this, some may recognize, is the Venus of Willendorf, kind of a Neolithic figurine that's kind of emblematic of the fact that in those days we think society was much more matriarchal, and the vision of beauty is quite different than what today we pursue. I mean, obviously reproduction was much more important in those days. Interesting enough, there are many female figurines in those times, very few male figurines. Right. And nevertheless, I kind of was able to find a Neolithic male figurine, so the paper came out of the book and became the male kind of a reverse Genesis. The women gave the paper to the male.
Fantastic.
And so here's the male figurine, looking rather perplexed and very male.
And I'm assured that this is on, I'm just very drawn to the word in here. It's open to a very specific page called Development of the Obsession with Thinness.
Right.
And when we talk about your inspiration coming from psychiatry or your background with the brain, I'm sure that there's lots to be said about that, how the specific books that you use are really ingrained in that sort of how the brain works. And it's very interesting. So now, what kind of reactions have you had to this art so far in the community?
Oh, right. You know, this is, as I said, this is, most of my work tends to be somewhat social political as a stimulus. And frankly, most of the reactions have been positive. Right. However, I always feel that I'm a bit of preaching to the converted. I'm always first it's people who go to galleries to see, so that's already a segment of the population. Often they're attracted to the work, they're kind of interested by it. So that is a bit of a problem because, and it comes back to this, what I said originally about the general public not thinking anymore that, well, going to see a show in a gallery or a museum is about furthering one's knowledge. Right. So the general public, I'm not sure what they would have as much although in general they are. I mean, these issues are not unpopular. I mean, pollution, the excess use of medications, the concern around the environment in general are fairly popular. So most of the time people are supportive of the message.
Right, excellent. And if there's something then that the general public could take away from this, we do have, as you're saying, sort of a consumer culture when it comes to art, and people really go to be entertained. And that is a big step, right? If we're putting our work in galleries where people might already be open to that, but you also have this population that sees art as entertainment, what would be a small step that someone as a general, I would say, consumer of art, or someone that might not be open to these ideas, what would be a small way to help them maybe look at art through a different lens? Or what would be some ways that we can ask the public to do that without having to understand everything all at once, because that can be quite overwhelming.
Right, for sure. I mean, the small step, and maybe a big step for someone, is indeed to go to theater, catch a live play. Once, even if you do it once a month or once every 2 months, or go to a gallery. If you see there's an opening and they're all listed in the newspapers, the Georgia Street and so on, just go to an opening or go to see a show that catches your attention. Being open to the fact that it will take work, that if you go there passively, if you go there just expecting to understand a thing, that's not what it is about. It's about sitting in front of a piece of work and asking yourself questions. Now, why is this that way? What do I see? What's the material? What is the shape? What is that? And what does it mean to me? If you do that work, that's how you get this kind of personal knowledge that through the art. So if you're willing to do that, just do that small little step, but they would be important, yeah.
Excellent. And so you're also involved in a lot of community art organizations in Vancouver. Specifically, I believe you're part of the collective at Gallery Gachet. Gachet, sorry. And if you can talk a little bit about what you do there, and just let us know a bit about, some people might not know that organization at all. So.
Well, I'm very pleased and proud of being a member of the collective of Gallery Gachet. Gachet is a gallery, essentially, with workshops that it provides as well in the downtown east side on Cordova Street, 88 Cordova. It's been in existence in that site at least since '97, and it has shows going on regularly. Most of its mandate is around addressing social inequity and mental health issues in the general public. And it also tries to showcase artists that live in the downtown east side. And it is an artist-run center. And I think it's probably one of the last real artist-run centers, in the sense that the collective is actually, if you want the board, there's no other board than the collective. And we actually hire and make the decisions in terms of the staff that are helping us run the gallery. And there's a very good show on right now that is a retrospective around the work of the gallery right now, ongoing till February.
Excellent. And is the gallery open for anybody to become a part of that collective, or how would somebody, if they want to be involved?
Well, I think absolutely. We definitely encourage people to come in and talk to us, and there's a volunteer coordinator. Okay. We do ask people to go through a volunteer training program, and after doing that, if they're still interested in becoming a collective member, then they just have to make a presentation, and the collective decides.
Excellent. And another organization I believe that you're part of is the Community Arts Council of Vancouver. Can you talk a little bit about your role? I think you're on the board there. Yeah,
I'm a board member, but of the Community Arts Council. Again, a very important organization for Vancouver. In particular, I have the environmental representation of eco-art, we call it. Okay. We organize regular, almost monthly eco-art salons, we call. They're open to the public, and they're fun.
Now, what's eco-art? That's a term that I don't think you use every day. So.
Right, ecology, ecological art, environmental art. People call it in a number of ways, land art and so on. But what it does share is obviously the preoccupation with the environment, number one. Secondly, most of the work addresses issues in the environment and often uses material that comes from the environment. Okay. But it's not only using, for example, natural products. It can be, like in this case, using rubber and making people think, well, why is it? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Right. It can be using pollution and plastics as well. The purpose, however, is to comment on the pollution and so on. And we're right now actually going to have a project, it's going to be shown in February, and it'll be probably there in March as well, in partnering with the Maritime Museum. Oh, wow. We have a project called Débris de Monde, which is about maritime pollution, which we know is a big problem. And the socially engaged component is that we're going to have school children come in and produce artwork with plastic pollutants, kind of bottles that will be on show as well at the Maritime Museum, and actual artists as well putting on, making artwork that will be visible there.
Excellent. And so would you describe, so the things that you do with wheatgrass, and I think you've called it something different. It's not exactly eco-art, it's bioart, is that right?
Right.
So what would be the difference between those two things?
Well, it's all linked to each other, so they're all related to some degree. Bioart is essentially working more directly with living material. Okay. If you wish. So it's a pretty wide, also, there are artists who directly will grow things out of cells, animal cells, in molds. So there is such a thing as making sculptures out of flesh. Wow. And that's happening as well. So that's, well, I don't do that, but I do make it out of grass in a way. So it's on that. And again, usually the preoccupation is about life, death, comments, pollution, and so on. So there's a linkage between these things.
And so if there's artists that are making things out of flesh, that seems very interesting. I guess the intersection of art and science isn't that disjointed. And is it more popular? It's something that I'm not quite familiar with, and I really don't see that everywhere. So
well, technology, digital, obviously, computer technologies. There's a whole branch of science that is in media arts, if you want. That's become very dependent on new developments in the sciences. And bioart is just one of those, where often you have the pairing of a scientist and an artist working together to create something.
Excellent. Well, that's fantastic. Now, I think you have one other project too. You're diverging a little bit away from physical art into the theater, I believe, yes. With a new project. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, I'm very excited. It's a very unique opportunity for me because it addresses exactly the concern that got me into the arts. Okay. This concern about healthcare becoming too business-like and the administration being too much like a corporation. Okay. So I was very pleased to audition and to be allowed to participate in a project called Maladjusted, which will be through the Headlines Theatre group. And it's part of their Theatre for Living philosophy. So over the next couple months, I'll be participating with others in actually developing a play, writing a script around this issue of the mechanization, the problems in how healthcare, particular mental health care system is developed. And then we will be putting the show on during the month of March at the Firehall Theatre. And what's different about this form of theatre, and again, where I encourage really the public to come and see, is that it directly involves the calls for the participation of the public. So there's a half hour or so of a play, and then the public has a chance to come in, if they wish, and modify the play. And come in and participates, and during the next hour and a half or so, to say, well, maybe this should have, if I was that person, I would have done that differently, or I think this would be better. And so on, we modify the play, and we learn through the feedback of the public what could be made better about the problem that is shown during part of the play.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming out and talking to us today. Now, if people want to see your art, I believe you have a website that people can. Right. So what's the website that people can go to? www.leichner.ca. So just my last name, .ca. And that's simple. Even if you just put my last name on Google, it'll come up. It'll come up, excellent. And as well, people, Gallery Gachet, if people want to get involved in community arts, maybe on a more practical level. Also, the Community Arts Council of Vancouver, people, is there a way that people can find out what's going on there? Again, both those groups have their own website, and both are very much dependent on volunteers. Okay. So we could not exist without volunteers to help us, and these are both excellent opportunities. If you said about how can someone make a contribution into the arts and fostering the arts, it's a wonderful way to connect up again. Excellent. So if you want to get involved with the arts here in Vancouver, find new ways to help out, check out both of those organizations. And thank you very much, Pierre, for coming to talk to us today again and showing us some of this beautiful art. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. And we'll see you next time on After Hours.